We're delighted to be here. One quick, change is we don't really think of ourselves as a security company. This is my fourth startup. I'm a security guy by experience. First company was called RipTech. It was one of the pioneering companies in the managed security services area. It was eventually acquired by Symantec. I was VP of Global Business Development at Symantec for a while. Great experience. Left after about a year. Did another startup called Media Sentry, which was doing anti-piracy work for those of us that were, really fond of downloading stuff from Napster and then all the other peer-to-peer environments. We had developed a platform for doing automated enforcement and interdiction. On that, was eventually acquired by SafeNet. A third company called Centrigo was eventually acquired by McAfee, and my fourth. This one's going to be the best one yet. My wife keeps telling me, when are you going to go get a real job? But really what we're all about is ownership and control of data in the cloud. And that's different than pure security. In addition to me, I'm just a mouthpiece. We've got a world-class organization. Our research and development is based in Tel Aviv, Israel. Our headquarters is here in New York. Everyone in the organization comes from large enterprise security backgrounds. But the most important thing as it relates to this context is deep crypto experience. We're funded and we're in the market after 4 years of research and development in the market as of about 6 months ago. So for the first 3.5 years, we did nothing but do R&D. Wanted to have a product we could stand behind before we unveiled it. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Cloud Security Alliance, just a quick show of hands. Who has heard of the Cloud Security Alliance? Okay, so it's a very small number. If you're not familiar with it, this is one of the takeaways, got nothing to do with us. CloudSecurityAlliance.org. It's a non-for-profit organization, about 40,000 members globally, a 5-year-old organization, grassroots, and they are the de facto standard-setting, best practice defining organization when it comes to things related to cloud security. Dave Cullinane, for many years, was the Chief Information Security Officer at eBay, and before that at a few large banks. Is now the chairman of the Cloud Security Alliance. Says, unless you know who can do what with your data, how do you manage risk and maintain control? And to us, that's really the most important question. Because he's not really talking about security, right? He's talking about ownership and control of your data. So we like to think of things in really simple context, right? You're going to the cloud. It's appealing because you're going to save a ton of money. It's more scalable. It's easier to use, et cetera, et cetera. But how does one think about roles and responsibilities? You as an end user organization versus the cloud service provider on the other hand, Microsoft, Google, you name it. In our view, and in the Cloud Security Alliance's view, more importantly housed, it breaks down this way. Cloud service provider, hosting, processing. It's a pretty simple concept. End user, ownership, and control. Now we sort of get what this means, hosting and processing, right? Patching and antivirus and redundancy and physical security and access control and you name it, all the things that one thinks about. But what does ownership and control really mean? I mean, we sort of have a conceptual understanding, but when you put it into context, it means these things, right? Data security, disclosure, compliance, and residency. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of these things real quickly, and I want to get on to a demo. But how about we start with this notion of loss and control. For those of you that are not sure whether the risk is real or whether it's an action or it's theoretical, I'm here to tell you the risk is real. Right? When you put data in the cloud, it's now in someone else's environment and you don't know what can happen to it. I ran out of space and could throw a ton more quotes on here. And we know, for example, Google last year, right, turned over user data to the government on average more than 1,000 times per month. It happens all the time. easiest way to conceptualize what this means in a real world scenario, something that happens every day, and what better place to do it than in the office of a major law firm, is talk about what happens when a company is served with a subpoena. Right? Fortunately, litigation is part of our business environment, and so I'm going to present two scenarios. Right? Scenario number one is your Exchange server, right? Your email server is sitting in a traditional context in your environment. Right? You have people administrating your Exchange server, and then we'll talk about what happens when it's in the cloud. So your company is served with a subpoena. What's the first thing you do? Usually the lawyers get this wrong.
Panic.
What? Any volunteers? What's the first thing you would do?
Call the lawyer.
Yeah, it's not a trick question. Call your lawyer, right? So this is not an advertisement for Cooley, but this is the first thing you do. And this is what the lawyers get paid to do, right? They respond to the subpoena, and they serve objections, and they try and quash, and they move for protective orders. In essence, what they're really doing is they're negotiating. They're negotiating with the court. And this negotiation can take days, weeks, months, or even longer. And at the end of the long process, you're going to comply. Right? But you're not going to comply with the original subpoena. You're going to comply with whatever agreed upon terms were agreed upon between your lawyer and the court. What happens when you're using Google or Microsoft or others, right? Your company is no longer maintaining its own email server. How many people here work for companies that have their email provided by Google at a corporate level? All right. How about Microsoft, Office 365, anybody? It's the same thing. We're going to pick on Microsoft, but it doesn't matter. Google's even worse. Your company's email is now being provided by Microsoft. Guess where the subpoena goes? Right? It goes to the cloud provider. And what happens next? Oh, they turn it over. So this is a really good way to go if you don't want to pay Cooley the big bucks, right? And time is of the essence, so this is perfect. It's not perfect if you're worried about your intellectual property or you're worried about information that's subject to attorney-client privilege. Because guess what? It's lost. So let's talk about what we can do. So the Cloud Security Alliance, again, they publish the best practices. This is the place to go to. There's the link. This is what they recommend in terms of end user best practices. Right? Number one, encrypt your data before it goes to the cloud. Do it in such a way that it's always encrypted, all three states, whether it's in transit, at rest, or now, more importantly, sure, this is the new part of it, in use, and we'll talk about this in just a minute. And when you do it, make sure that you, right, your organization controls the keys, not the cloud provider. So if Microsoft or Google says we can encrypt it for you and so on, it's sort of like, it's not really solving the problem. So we're working with a global pharma. Same thing. I mean, Microsoft was calling on these guys for 2 years. This organization was going to save millions of dollars on an annual basis by pushing all of their Exchange servers up into Office 365, get better email at a fraction of the cost. The deal was just about to get done. The lawyers found out about it, and they said, "Are you guys nuts?" Deal stopped. Global media company. Think about this. Journalists, reporters. What's the last thing, what's the most important asset in that organization? Sources, right? Sources and leads of the reporters. It would really be a bad thing, Microsoft, just to turn it all over. So these organizations, not just law firms, pharma, healthcare, financial, technology, anywhere where this kind of information is important, you want to make sure that you follow these best practices. So that's really what we're all about. We're a platform that supports your long-term cloud requirements, and think about us in the context of ownership and control, because most cloud providers, at least the good ones, and I would put Google into this category, certainly Microsoft, and some of the others, they're doing everything they can, right? They're adhering, by the way, to their end of the bargain. So really good security, probably better than most of our organizations can provide themselves. Trouble is, they're introducing this whole other element of ownership and control into the equation. So wouldn't it be nice if you can have the best of both worlds? The inherent security built into Office 365, plus the same level of ownership and control over your data that you have today when it's on premise. What you're looking at here is a screenshot of browser-based view into someone's mailbox. Nothing radical here, but the data that's sitting on the Exchange server in the cloud looks like that. We're encrypting it using 256-bit AES. We're then taking the encryption, the ciphertext, we're encoding it in Unicode characters, so it's a mix of Chinese and Korean characters. It's not a translation. We do that just because it's a more efficient representation of the ciphering text than using ASCII. But that's what's there. So what happens, it means the encryption is applied before it leaves your environment, right? Before the data is transmitted across the WAN. It's encrypted in transit, at rest, in use. The really important thing is this next one. The encryption maintains the content characteristics allowing server-side processing. And this is really what I was referring to when I was saying encryption in use. You're going to run operations on the server. The server is not in your environment. It's at Microsoft. So when you want to search through that data that's sitting up there, the search query takes place up in another environment. You can't search on top of encrypted data. At least you couldn't. Now you can, right? You can't index encrypted data. Well, you couldn't. Now you can. And so all these operations can take place somewhere outside of your environment. The encrypted resultant is then served up, we decrypt it, and then present it in clear text. It does not require any modifications. There's no plugin. There's no user app. There's no anything on the desktop. You don't have to train users. And also, importantly, there's no change to Microsoft. So we're in between. We're a network level solution that exists between the point of where the data is generated and the cloud provider. So for those of you that aren't network architects, and you can still follow this one, I promise. We got a scenario, we have someone on premise sending an email to someone off. It says roaming employee. That person could be behind. It could be an employee, or it could be a customer, a client. It could be your best friend. It doesn't have to be someone who actually works for your company. In this case, Mia is sending an email to Vincent. And she says, attached is the customer's social security number and credit card information. If you're a healthcare organization, it could be PHI and sort of HIPAA, data that's subject to HIPAA, you name it. She hits send, right? The data is transmitted over the wire. It passes through the Vaultive appliance. We're showing it here as physical hardware, but truth be told, it's just software. It's all written in C++. We can deploy it on dedicated hardware. We can put it on a VM. We're showing it here at the gateway in the corporate DMZ. So it's under the enterprise's control, right? And enterprise IT maintains the keys that are in the Vaultive. Sorry, it is, if I hit the right button, encrypted in line. And then the encrypted text is sent out into the cloud. That's all Microsoft ever gets. That's all Google would ever get. So now think of an attack. The attacker can be the Chinese government, could be the US government in the form of a subpoena or something. It could be a hacker inside Microsoft, a rogue employee. It could be a hacker outside of Microsoft. It doesn't matter. When that attacker goes after the data, all that person is ever going to see is useless gibberish, right? There's nothing that can be made of that data. Whereas, right, when the email has to be delivered to a legitimate recipient, email does have to take an extra hop. It passes through the Vaultive appliance. It gets decrypted in line, and then is presented to the intended recipient in the clear. By the way, we have TLS and SSL encryption between the end user and the device. That's what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you. And really important, so what you've done in essence, for those of you that are worried about compliance and encryption at rest, right? You're a healthcare organization, all your data up in the cloud is subject to HIPAA. Well, you've automatically extended the perimeter of your organization to include all that. real quickly, let me just go to a browser and show you a demo because just have to drag this over here and do it this way. This is hard for me to read. So where is my mouse? I don't see it. There it is. Sorry, it's on the screen. So I've got two tabs open here. One, Marcellus. This is just, I'm using a browser. I can do this in Outlook. It doesn't matter. So Marcellus is logged on to Office 365. And he's doing, let me keep my computer here so I don't have to do it backwards. I'm not that coordinated. And he's going through his email, and he can read it, and he can do all kinds of things, like pick a word and decide he's going to search for that word. And the search result is there, right? The search took place at Microsoft. It didn't take place locally, right? You can do all kinds of other really neat things. You can, for example, open attachments. Right? He clicks on this email. This email has an attachment, and he wants to look at it. Cool. Let's hit open. And he can open as an attachment, and he can see it. Whereas, let's close this, I click on this tab over here. I'm bypassing Vaultive, and I've logged on directly to Microsoft. So, and the way you can sort of see all that is you can see here, just look at the address here. This I'm going directly to Microsoft. I click on this, I'm going directly to Vaultive. So, it's kind of interesting. Do I have one more minute? Yeah. So, let me just ask for a volunteer. I'll pick you, John.
Yeah. John at nyetm.com.
Do this one hand. nyetm.com. I went to West Point, so this is a matter of religion. You'll get an email momentarily. When I look at this, by the way, I can go in my sent folders. There's the email that I sent to John, and so forth. If I click on this view, right, and I look on the sent folder, it's the exact same mailbox. There's the email I sent to John, right? I wrote it in English. You get it?
Yep.
All right. So if I were to click on this and just open it, this is actually what's hosted at Microsoft, right? Subject, body, attachments are automatically encrypted. Did you reply? Sorry, got to reply. Every email is encrypted. How many of us have used solutions like Voltage or PGP or these other things like point-to-point, right? One of the lessons I learned 20 years ago in the security space is that security is only as good as it is easy to use. If I have to train people on how to use security, I've already lost. If I have to tell users, right-click on this, encrypt this, and so forth, for this email, but not for the 99 others, I've already lost. Because users will forget. They'll get it wrong. Your policy of don't put PHA, right, healthcare information, HIPAA data into an email is guaranteed to fail because people are going to do it. Sorry, did you reply?
Yeah.
So, hey, so there's the inbox. Go Quakers. All right. Anyhow, that's, but if I were to look in this view, and where is, subject, I just got to sort by. Scroll. Oh, sorry. You're right. There it is. there's no latency. There's no perceptible latency anyhow. We're talking about microseconds. Think of this as sort of like a router on the way. It's an extra hop. That we can do this with attachments. We could do it with any application. I've shown it here for Office 365. We are now in the process of working with Microsoft and bringing this out into the market to all their Office 365 customers. We've prototyped this for about 40 other cloud applications. Initially, the SaaS app vendors were like, "Whoa, this is scary, and we don't want this, in our sales process." What they've realized is a lot of companies aren't going. I mean, dinky companies, like companies like us, we're a startup, we're going to go. But big companies aren't going. It's really scary. With a solution like this, they're happy, right? Because we knock those obstacles down and they can start selling. One of the things that I'll tell you, this is tricky. How about I just do it this way? That mouse. That Microsoft, tells us they love it, right? At least the folks that are out there trying to sell cloud-based applications into the enterprise. I couldn't say any better than they do. I'll stop right there. I think I've gone over by a minute or two. Any questions?
So if I'm accessing it through a mobile device, is it encrypted locally? And if not, is there any risk with decrypting on the client and then sending the plain text over, say, Verizon 3G?
No, so there's no difference at all. So we support all mobile devices. So whether you use an iPhone, Android, even Windows phones, you name it, there's no difference.
But where does the decryption actually happen if I'm accessing over 3G?
The decryption happens, remember that network diagram? It happens at the, I go backwards. It happens at the Vaultive appliance. So let's go back to here. This could be an iPad, it could be an iPhone, it could be a laptop, it doesn't matter. The data will take an extra hop through here. And it works seamlessly. You don't have to do anything on your phone to change anything. Like one of the advantages of Office 365, for example, it works with a protocol auto discover that would point that person's email records directly at the Vaultive appliance. Sure.
So Microsoft and Google offer chat services that are heavily used, and those conversations are stored as well. So are you encrypting those on the
It works the
server side as
same
well?
way.
Okay.
What happens if the Vaultive appliance is down?
It's a great question. If the Vaultive appliance goes down, you won't be able to read your email, which is why we always deploy this in paired, so with high availability. And we also work very well with load balancing, so you can have this distributed and backed up. And we've done this now in organizations where obviously that's critical, so it needs to happen. That's built into the product. Any other questions?
What's the price?
For this, we do it on a per mailbox per month basis. So that's the way these cloud email providers. So Microsoft charges you a few bucks per mailbox per month. We'll layer on another couple bucks per mailbox per month, and just do it that way. Sure.
But this is on-premises software, or this is a service that's hosted by you guys and turnkey that way?
So we don't host it. What we've shown here, it's on-prem. But this Vaultive appliance doesn't have to be at the DMZ. You can host it somewhere else, and there are just trade-offs involved. From a security practitioner, right, a purist would tell you, put it on-prem, put it behind the VPN. But you could put it in a trusted third-party environment. There are companies that we're working with that are going to offer hosted Vaultive, and the value proposition there, candidly, is you'll be able to have your email at Microsoft and your Vaultive, right, provided by another third party, and it's different, right? So it's not the same as having on-prem, but it's pretty good. It may be good enough for a lot of people. Sir?
The Vaultive appliance, do you manufacture that yourself, or do you?
We're a software provider, so we don't sell hardware. If you have your own, you provide your own hardware. We give you the specs. You put it on it. If you already have it, throw up a VM and put Vaultive into a VM.
Any plans on allowing the product to work with cloud storage, like a box or?
Cloud storage, so file sharing applications, CRM applications, database applications, collaboration apps. The funny thing is, so we went out there, did a survey of CIOs, CTOs, VPs of IT, and said, well, which cloud apps would you like us to do this for? Right? I was like, oh, all of those. And it's like, my head started to spin. And then we said, well, kind of turned the question sideways and said, okay, if all the things you're currently doing, running on-prem, what's the first app that you'd like to rip out and pop up into the cloud? And then all the heterogeneity goes away, and it's like 80% said, get that doggone Exchange server off my back, right? And pop that into the cloud. Email's a pure commodity. It makes no sense to maintain it ourselves. We get better email, cheaper, so email's first. We're going to rule out support for all these other applications over the course of time. Sure.
Do you have any thoughts about consumer-facing solution, either as an app or a cloud provider that would be on top, or rather as a separate top to a Gmail or Office?
We've talked about it. We've thought about it. I would tell you it's something that's likely not going to happen in 2013. It may happen down the road. My experience with consumers and security sounds good in theory. No one's willing to pay for it. So it starts at the enterprise market, and down the road, this could potentially become a consumer play. I don't know yet.
Time for one more.
Last question.
Two questions, actually.
In that case, I'll have a beer.
Does it actually work in instant messaging as well as Bloomberg terminals? And the second one is this actually encrypted attachments as well?
So the WikiLeaks image
Yeah.
I showed you was an attachment. I didn't try and do it. If I had gone into the unencrypted, if I'd gone into the encrypted view, the one where I was going directly to Microsoft and tried to open the attachment, what you would have seen was that it couldn't open. I would have gotten an error message that said unrecognizable file type can't open. So in every email, subject, body, attachments, automatically encrypted. You asked another question.
Yeah, because there's other forms of messaging for most enterprises, like Bloomberg terminal.
So one of the things our core IP, right, and what we spent almost 4 years developing, was the ability to do encryption in such a way that it could be sorted, searched, indexed, and so forth. What we're now doing on top of that is configuring that capability, our security engine, if you will, to support different applications. And it's an app-by-app process. Some are harder, some are easier. Probably none harder than Exchange. Exchange is a beast. It's ugly. So every protocol, whether it's IMAP, POP3, and so forth, but I'm talking even MAPI, full-blown MAPI. We proxy it. It works seamlessly, and you can still use Outlook and all those features that Microsoft built into Exchange.
We'll do one more.
Sure.
Just because it's an interesting, could present a really interesting problem. What happens if, when it's served, the government, for example, pushes back on you, pushes to you guys an obstruction charge, right, for failing to provide the key?
We don't have the key. This Vaultive is deployed on this company's network. They and only they have the key. What do? I mean, can I keep going? I'm going to skip past all this and skip past all this and all this and all this, and there's your mobile device, and this you've seen, right? Now you've got Vaultive, Office 365 up in the cloud. Same scenario. The subpoena goes to Microsoft. What do? They don't have a choice. Remember, turning over customer data to the government is not good for business, for Google or Microsoft. They don't want to do it. They have to do it. What do? They turn over useless gibberish because that's all they have. What happens next? Well, the court has to resubmit the subpoena back to who? To you. It's your data. And then what do? Well, you call your friends at Cooley and you let them do what they need to do, and ultimately you're going to comply. But the whole point is, right, this process down here needs to mirror what you're already doing on premise. You shouldn't have to give up that ownership and control. Vaultive is not involved anywhere in the process. We sold a piece of software to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.